Bright Duty. Every student matters.
Hello dear students, welcome to another lecture. So in our last lecture, we had read about the changing situation both inside as well as outside the secret annex. We had read about the ways things were changing altogether. Now talking about the 6th of June, there was something very important that you can just read the moment you start reading about this day, and that is the D-Day. So she writes, "This is D-Day. The BBC radio announced at 12. This is the day the invasion has begun." So what is this D-Day? Let's read first about that. So on the 6th of June 1944, Britain, America, Canada and France, they had attacked the German forces on the coasts of Normandy, which was in France. Now these allied forces, they had over 150,000 soldiers. They attacked and they gained a victory, which became the turning point in World War II in Europe. This famous battle, this battle which took place between the Allied forces and the German forces, is called the D-Day or the invasion of Normandy. So the invasion of Normandy took on the 6th of June. So this is why she mentions this day as such important day. At 1, BBC reported that 11,000 planes are flying in to help the invasion, either on bombing raids or carrying soldiers. 4,000 boats are arriving in the area between Cherbourg and Le Havre. English and American troops are already fighting there. So at 1 in the afternoon, the BBC reported that 11,000 planes are flying in to help the invasion, to help this attack which has been initiated by the Allied forces. Either they were helping with the bombing raids or they had more soldiers being brought into. 4,000 boats were arriving in the sea between Cherbourg and Le Havre. The English and the American troops are fighting there already. Is this really the beginning of the end of the war? It still seems too good to come true. Will this year, 1944, bring us victory? We don't know yet, but where there's hope, there's life. It fills us with fresh courage and makes us strong again. So she writes, and she was wondering if this attack was going to bring an end to the war. She was just believing that it was so good to be true. At times something is so good that you don't believe it will happen with you, it will take place in your life. She was wondering if the year 1944 will bring them victory. They do not know anything yet. But it is said that when there is hope, there's life. It fills us with fresh courage and makes us strong again. So she says that this hope had filled them with courage. This, hope had made them feel strong again. The best part about the invasion is that I have the feeling that friends are on the way to free us from the Germans. Maybe, Margaret says, I can even go back to school in October or September. So the best part of the invasion that she had heard was that their friends, that means the Allied forces, were on the way to help the Jews being free from the Germans. Margaret, her sister, even gave her the hope that she might be able to go back to school in October or September. Friday, the 9th of June, she writes, "Great news of the invasion. The Allies have taken Boyaux, a village on the coast of France, and are now fighting for Seine." So these are the, the progressive things that took place with respect to the Allied forces. Tuesday, 13th June 1944. Another birthday has gone by, so now I am 15. I received quite a few gifts, books on art history, a set of underwear, a handkerchief, a jar of jam, 2 honey cookies, a botany book from father and mother, a gold bracelet from Margaret, candy from Meep, and flowers from Peter. So 13th June was Anne Frank's birthday and she turned 15 this year. She received a lot of gifts. She received a book on art history, she received handkerchief, jar of jam, honey cookies, botany books, flowers, chocolates. The invasion is still going splendidly in spite of the miserable weather, pouring rains, strong winds, and rough seas. So she writes that although the weather was very bad, the weather was so bad that it was continuously raining. Pouring rains means it was continuously raining. There were strong winds which were blowing. The seas were very rough. There was storm in the sea. But despite that, the invasion, the attack by the Allied forces was going very good. It was going very well. Peter's affection for me grows day by day, but something is holding us back. Sometimes I think my terrible longing for him was not real. But that's not true, because if I'm unable to go to his room for a day or two, I long for him as desperately as I ever did. Peter is kind and good, and yet there are things I don't like about him. I especially don't care for his dislike of religion and the way he talks about food. And why doesn't he share his innermost thoughts with me? So Anne Frank further says that Peter's affection for me, the kind of affection, the love that Peter had developed for Anne Frank, that was growing day by day. But there was something that was holding them back. There was something amiss. There was some problem between them. She writes that sometimes I think my terrible longing for him was not real. So at times she felt that these longing means when you miss somebody badly. So she felt that this feeling of missing him badly was not real. How can somebody miss someone so much? But that is not true, she says, because if I am not able to go to his room or meet him, I want to meet him desperately. So it is not fake, it is very much real. She writes that Peter is very kind, he's very good, but there were a few things she did not like about him, especially the dislike that Peter has for religion, the way he talks about food, and the reason and the way he does not share his innermost thoughts with her. I think it's because I have not been outdoors for so long that I have grown so crazy about nature. I remember a time when a magnificent blue sky, chirping birds, moonlight, and budding flowers would not have affected me. But things have changed since I came here. Looking at the sky, the clouds, the moon, and the stars really does make me feel calm and hopeful. It's the best medicine for all my troubles. Nature makes me feel humble and ready to face everything with courage. So she says that, maybe because I have not been outdoors for a very long time, I think I have gone crazy. There's some problem with my head. She says that there was a time when looking at the huge blue sky, listening to the chirping of the birds, looking at the moonlight, the growing flowers, that did not have any effect on me. I found it very normal. But now the things have changed. When I look at the sky, I look at the clouds, the moon, the stars, it makes me feel very calm. It makes me feel very hopeful. She says that this is the best medicine for all the troubles, all the problems that I have. Nature makes me feel very humble, Nature makes me feel that I am strong, I am brave and can fight it. Unfortunately, she says that she can only look at the nature through the dusty curtains over the dirty windows. So the windows were dirty, they could not open the windows, it was covered by dirty curtains. So whatever nature she could enjoy was only through these windows. June 27th, which was a Tuesday, she writes, "The mood has changed. Everything is going well with the invasion. Cherbourg, Wiesbach, Zlobin fell today to the Allies. What a feat. In the 3 weeks since D-Day, there has not been a day without rain and storm. But this bad luck has not kept the British and the Americans from displaying their might." So she writes that the mood is changed, that is, they were in a good mood. Everything was going very well with the invasion, with the attack. All these places mentioned here, they were taken over by the Allies, by the opposite party. What a feat! What a feat! So it was a very exquisite, a thrilling thing to enjoy. In 3 weeks, it has been 3 weeks since that D-Day when the attack happened. And she writes that not even a single day has passed without rain and storm. But despite this problem in the weather conditions, the British and the Americans have continued to display their might, their power, their strength has not affected. How far do you think we'll be on July 27th? So she was just wondering that if 27th June the situation was so good, what will happen 1 month from now? July 15, which was a Saturday, she writes, "I know very well that I won Peter over as a friend and not the other way round. I created an image of him in my mind as a quiet, sweet boy, badly in need of friendship and love. I too needed to pour out my heart to someone, a friend who would help me find my way. I succeeded. I finally got him to be my friend, but we became shockingly close. We talked about the most private things, but we have not yet touched upon the things that are closest to my heart. And I still can't understand Peter. Is he shy or is there really nothing deep in him?" So she again writes about Peter on the 15th July. She says that I think me and Peter are very good friends, but other than that, there was nothing special. She says that ever since I have known Peter, the image of Peter in my mind was of a boy who was very quiet, sweet, who needed a friend, who needed love desperately. She writes that I also needed to pour out my heart to someone. She also needed to talk to somebody, as we have read. A friend she also required. She succeeded. She was successful. She got Peter, who is a wonderful friend. She says that we have become surprisingly very close to each other. We've discussed with each other a few of the most private things. But despite being so close, she writes that we have still not talked about things which are close to my heart. The deepest things in my heart are still not known to him. And she says, I don't understand him. Is he so shy? Or is there nothing deep in him? There is nothing inside him. This is what she was wondering. The biggest mistake I made, I forced Peter more than he realizes to get close to me, and now he's holding on too tightly. No other friendship is possible between us now, and I don't know how to change that anymore. So she says that I have actually made a very big mistake. And what mistake is she talking about? She has forced Peter, to get close to her. And now Peter is so close to her that he is not leaving her. He's not giving any space to her. There is no other friendship possible between them. So they don't think there can be a third person between them. Peter is so much after and into Anne Frank, and she does not know how to change this anymore. Friday, 21st July, she writes, "Things are going well. Great news. Someone tried to kill Hitler, and it was actually a German general of high ranking. Hitler escaped, unfortunately, with only a few minor burns and scratches. But this is proof that many officers and generals are fed up with the war and would like this to end." So she writes that things were going very well. The great news was that somebody tried to kill Hitler. And the one who tried to kill Hitler was actually a general from the German army only. Okay, so it was not one of somebody from the Allied forces, but from the German army itself. But unfortunately, Hitler escaped. He ran away, he prevented himself from any major things to happen to him. There were only a few burns and scratches that he got. But she writes that this is the proof that everyone across the world was fed up with the war. They were all just through with the war and they wanted to end it. Tuesday, the 1st of August, 1944. As I've told you before, I'm split into two different people. One side of me is cheerful, appreciates the lighter side of things and enjoys a rude joke or a kiss. No one knows my better, purer, deeper side, and that's why most people don't like me. Oh, I can be an amusing clown for an afternoon, but after that, everyone's had enough of me for a month. So Anne Frank writes that, as I have told you before, I think there are two different sides. There are two different people who are living inside me. One side of me is very cheerful. This side appreciates the lighter side of the things. This side looks at the positive, the enjoyable, the cheerful side of the things, who wants to joke, who's happy when she gets a kiss. But she says that there is nobody who knows the other side, which is very pure, which is very deep. And that is the reason why people don't like me, because they have not seen that purer side of mine. She says that I know I can be an amusing clown, a joker, somebody who can make people laugh throughout the afternoon. So one afternoon I can make people laugh, but then the entire month nobody would want to see me. This is the kind of person I am. I've tried to push the first Anne away, to beat her down and hide her, but it does not work, and I know why. I'm afraid that people will laugh at me. Only the light-hearted Anne is used to being laughed at. The deeper Anne is too weak. If I force the good Anne to come out for even 15 minutes, she refuses to speak and makes Anne number 1 do the talking. And before I realize it, the nicer Anne has disappeared. So she says that I have tried to push the first Anne away, the hard, the stronger, the rebellious Anne. She says I have tried to push her away, to hide her, to beat her so that the nicer Anne can come out. But she says it does not work, and I know why it does not work. She says, because I know that once the weak-hearted Anne will come out, people are going to laugh at me. Only the light-hearted Anne is used to being laughed at. The deeper Anne is too weak. She says that deep inside me, I know I am very weak. It is only the Anne that is on the face which makes people laugh. If I force, she says, that if I force the good Anne to come over me for even 15 minutes, that nice, that good Anne will not say anything. She will just tolerate everything being quiet. And since the nice Anne does not say anything, the evil Anne has to come over and take the part. And before I realize, the nicer Anne is again vanished. So the nice Anne is never seen when there are other people around. But when I'm alone, it's she who's almost always there. I'm trying very hard to change myself, but it's tough. I know exactly how I'd like to be, how I am on the inside. But unfortunately, I'm like that only with myself. If I am quiet and serious in front of the others, they think I am ill. But I keep trying to find a way to become what I'd like to be and what I could be if only there were no other people in the world. So she says that this is the reason why the nice Anne is never seen around when the people are there. So in front of people, the nice Anne is never there. It is only the evil one that takes her place. She says, when I am alone, I know the nice Anne is there. I try very hard to change myself, but it's very difficult. I know exactly how I want to be, how I am deep inside my heart. But unfortunately, this nicer Anne is present only when I am alone. It is there with myself. If I am quiet and serious in front of the others, they think that I am ill. I am not feeling well. But I keep trying to find a way to become what I'd like to be. She says, I always try and find a way I can be what I want to be and how I can be if there were no other people in the world. So after this, Anne Frank's diary ends. So this was the last day of Anne Frank's diary. Let us read what happened thereafter. So on the morning of 4th August 1944, a car arrived at 263 Priesengracht, the address of the secret annex. German and Dutch police arrested the 8 people who were hiding in the annex. Somebody must have told the authorities that they were hiding there. They also arrested 2 of their helpers, Mr. Kreller and Mr. Kupuis. Meep and Ellie were not arrested. The police took all the money and anything valuable that they could find in the annex. Meep later found Anne's diary in the building and kept it safely until after the war. So, on the morning of 4th August, there was a car which was arrived at this address, which was the address of the secret annex. The German and the Dutch police, they came, they arrested the 8 people who were living in the secret annex. Somebody had informed the authorities that these 8 people were hiding there. Now, Mr. Kreller and Mr. Kupuis, who were helping them, they were also arrested, but Meep and Ellie were not arrested. When the police had arrested these 8 people, whatever money, whatever valuable things, whatever precious and expensive things the police could find, they took away that also with them. Meep later found this diary of Anne Frank and she kept it safely with herself until the war was over. The police took Kreller and Kupuis to prison in Amsterdam. On 11 September, they were all sent to a concentration camp in Amersfoort, also in Holland. Because Kupuis was ill, he was allowed to go free on 18 September. He lived in Amsterdam until he died in 1959. Kreller later escaped and he went to live in Canada where he died in 1989. So the police took Kupuis and Kreller to a prison which was there in Amsterdam. On 11 September, these 2 people were sent to the concentration camp which was in Amersfoort, which was again in Holland. Since Kupuis was ill, he was allowed to go free on the 18th of September. He lived in Amsterdam, but then he died in the year 1959. Mr. Kreller, he escaped, he ran away from the camp, he went to live in Canada and he died in 1989. Ellie's full name was Elizabeth Voskuil Wicks and she lived in Amsterdam in 1983. Meep Sandruzisch, Gies lived in Amsterdam till she died in 2010, and her husband Jan died in 1993. Now, the 8 people from the annex were first taken to a prison in Amsterdam. Then they were sent to Auschwitz, which was a concentration camp in Poland. It seems that Mr. Van Dan died by gas in Auschwitz. So, Mr. Van Dan died when he was at the concentration camp because of gas, and his wife was taken to several more concentration camps. So, Mr. Van Dan died, Mrs. Van Dan was taken further to several concentration camps. She died in a concentration camp, but nobody knows how. On 16 January, Peter Van Dan had to go on the terrible prisoner's walk from Auschwitz to Mannhausen in Austria, where he died on 5th May 1945. He died only 3 days before the Allies got to the camp. So 16 January 1945, Peter had to go on some terrible prisoner's walk. So there was a prisoner's walk. All the prisoners were made to move from Auschwitz, from Mauthausen in Austria. And on the 5th of May, he died. And when he died, after that, 3 days later, the Allies had got to that camp. So had that been 3 more days, he would have surely survived. Albert Dessel, the dentist, he died on 20th September in the Neuengamme concentration camp. So he also died. Edith Frank, who was Anne Frank's mother, she died again in Auschwitz concentration camp on 6 January because she was too tired and too hungry to live any longer. Margaret and Anne Frank were taken from Auschwitz to the Bergen-Belsen concentration camp near Hanover in Germany. A terrible illness attacked the prisoners there. So in that camp, there was some very bad illness that struck over all the prisoners. They both died in the winter of 1944-45. Anne must have died, it is believed, the exact date is not known, but it is believed that she must have died late February or early March. All the bodies of the prisoners were thrown together. So the bodies were thrown. The British Army arrived at the camp on 12th April. So Anne Frank probably died in the later stages of February or the early March, but the American armies arrived in April. Otto Frank was the only one of the 8 to survive the war. After Russian soldiers reached Auschwitz, he was finally taken to Amsterdam. In 1953, he moved to Switzerland, married again, and lived there until his death in 1980. He spent the rest of his life trying to share the message of his daughter's diary with the rest of the world. So Otto Frank was the only person of those 8 members in the secret annex who survived. He, after the Russian soldiers had reached Auschwitz, he was finally taken to Amsterdam. In 1953, he moved to Switzerland, he married again, and then he died in 1980. After that, whatever life he had, he just spent that life on spreading the message that was written in Anne Frank's diary. So this is how the diary of Anne Frank came into picture. We read that it was Ellie who had found that diary. She kept it with herself, and probably later it was handed over to Otto Frank. And Otto Frank wanted that diary to be published so that the feelings of a young girl, or that situation, those most difficult 2.5 years when these people were hiding in the secret annex, could be shown to the people from the eyes of a young girl who went through multiple emotions, multiple feelings: hatred, anger, love, romance, humor. So she'd seen everything in her during her hiding in the secret annex, and the father wanted the world to see that from the eyes of his daughter. And with this, my dear students, we come to the end of the diary of a young girl. I hope you read this diary with as much interest as I had, and this was actually an awakening to all of us who are, who are living, who are sitting with our families, and is telling us about the problems, the situations, the adverse circumstances that these people had to go through. And this in itself makes us being grateful to God, pray to God, and thank Him for the life that He's given to us. So, with this, my dear students, I am going to pause here. In the next lecture, we are going to discuss the back exercises of this, The Diary of a Young Girl, because the weightage of this autobiography is 15 marks. So, I'm going to discuss all the questions that we are given with this. So, I'll see you all now in my next lecture.